Oh, it's happening. But before you hit that dislike button, or leave a rage comment, hear me out. For those of you who have watched my previous videos in this series, you know what's going on by now. If you're new, then let me fill you in. I am a huge Assassin's Creed fan, and have been since I first played Assassin's Creed 2 back in 2009. Like many of you, I fell in love with it, and I've played every major installment more than once. I have enjoyed all of them, some more than others. However, even the most die-hard fan will admit that the franchise has somewhat lost its luster. Whatever your take on the modern era of Assassin's Creed is, there is no denying that it hasn't lived up to the potential that we were hoping for. However, if you ask fans, at what point do you think it went off the rails, you will get very different answers. Some will say Odyssey, and its complete abandonment of the basic lore. Others will point to Unity's public flop. For many, the last real AC game was 3, and I've even heard the extreme take that there was only one true Assassin's Creed game. Personally, I think all of you are wrong, but I also think all of you are right. It hasn't been one decision, or even one game, that has left us where we are now. There have been a series of mistakes along the way, some obvious and some not so obvious. In fact, some of the most beloved aspects of the games may have led to the negative long-term effects for the franchise. What I am hoping to do is examine each game to identify what these things were and exactly how they affected the series as a whole. This, in many ways, is just as hard for me to say as it may be for you to hear. You may not like some of the things I have to say. You may vehemently disagree. But just know that what I critique, I do so out of love. So without further ado, let's get into it. Why Assassin's Creed Unity ruined Assassin's Creed. Sort of. Assassin's Creed Unity should have been a masterpiece. I mean, just look at it. The first AC game on the 4th generation of consoles, it possessed a 1-to-1 scale of Paris during the French Revolution. So perfectly crafted, with enough attention to detail, it was potentially going to be used to rebuild the Notre Dame after it had burned. I don't remember cities feeling this vibrant and immersive since Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. The free-running system had been completely revamped, both in terms of functionality and aesthetics. The beautiful animations made Arnaud look like a gymnast as he parkoured across the Paris rooftops. We had more control over our ascent, but more importantly, for the first time, we had control over our descents, and this made all the difference. Being able to alternate between the two made a more dynamic traversal system that I have yet to see matched. But it wasn't just the free running that gave us more user control. The stealth made leaps and bounds over its predecessors, and even the detractors of this game's magnificence will still admit that the stealth is far better than any to date. We could crouch. It took 8 installments, but we could finally crouch. We could purposely hide behind objects and morph into our surroundings rather than wait for our surroundings to morph into us. For the first time, we had not one, but 2 tools at our disposal. We could attack from the shadows or distract to create more. Alternating seamlessly between the two, never have I felt more like an assassin than trying to complete a Unity mission completely undetected. But far more commonly overlooked was the combat. It wasn't flashy or brutal like Black Flag or 3, nor was it overly simple like in 2 or Brotherhood. Arnaud felt the weight of swinging a heavy sword. We could not move at lightning speed anymore, and thus had to fight like mere mortals. Gone was the ability to use human shields anytime a guard pulled out his pistol. A rolling dodge may get the job done, but it wasn't a certainty, and God forbid you encounter more than a few guards at a time. it would be all but a certain death. The actual fear of arousing too much attention made the experience all the better, as for the first time in an Assassin's Creed game, I didn't want to be spotted. Not out of some intrinsic motivation to be stealthy, but by practical design, as it was the more efficient route. The first act is delivered brilliantly. A man in love with a woman he cannot have, estranged from a father he will never see, and loyal to the man who links him between the two, only to have this ripped from him as well. But what's worse is it was his fault. Arnaud chose a few moments of glee with Elise, and this choice led to the death of Monsieur de la Serre. When the love of his life blames him for her father's death, he has nowhere else to run. With no one to turn to, he joins the madman's cult, and takes a dive into a new life, one betwixt the balance of chaos and order. If that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. But you know, it isn't all it's cracked up to be. The city has bugs. Still, years after launch, the people of Paris appear as they please. The parkour is brilliant until you get stuck on a wall, or in a tree, or on nothing at all, really. Are you taking your time to make sure you don't get caught in a stealth mission? No worries, NPCs can see right through the fucking wall. And the love story that had our attention comes and goes without any sense of pace, so that by the time we reach our climactic ending, our star-crossed lover doesn't feel quite like Juliet. In fact, she doesn't feel like much of anything. We spent too much time tracking the sage. Or were we tracking de la Serre's killer? Was it both? Were we saving Elise? Or were we saving ourselves? What is the driving conflict? Is it all of these things? Is it none? The story unfortunately unravels much like the city it is placed in. Ubisoft had long since suffered from a deadline problem, artificially placed of course, while games like Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto, Horizon series, God of War all take their time, even if this means several years between release dates, in order to ensure that the product that they produce is exactly what they envision their consumers playing. Ubisoft does not. They would rather release as many games as possible, even if it is mediocre, to drive the most amount of profits they can. If Red Dead Redemption is a filet mignon, then Assassin's Creed is a Big Mac. Sure, it still tastes good, but it doesn't wow you with the quality. Ubisoft is the McDonald's of gaming companies. Unfortunately, I will still have to pay the same price on launch as I will for God of War Ragnarok, and that's a damn shame. But for a moment, imagine if they didn't rush. Imagine if they had took their time with Unity. Maybe an extra 3, 6, 9 months, even a year. Just imagine if they had perfected this setting, removed all of the bugs, completed the story, took their time and made the best game they could have. They wouldn't have had to scrap the franchise after Syndicate. They wouldn't have had to start anew. Unity, not Origins, could have been the future of Assassin's Creed. It could be built upon, improved, taken to new heights. Unfortunately, Ubisoft bailed on their own leap of faith. When I first booted up Unity, I was able to spend a few hours exploring Versailles. Then after the escape from the Bastille and the wounded heart of Arnaud, I found myself in Paris. Of course, I paused the game and opened the map. Icons upon icons of endless side content at my fingertips. It was overwhelming. Do I start doing them now? Wait until after the main quest line? Alternate between the two? Do I go for the collectibles, the Paris stories, the murder mysteries, the Helix Rift, the enigmas, or do I try my hand at the co-op missions all by myself? There was so much to do, and I felt like I had to do all of it. However, once you start dipping your toes into it, you quickly realize most of it kinda sucks. Sure, the murder mysteries were phenomenal. getting progressively more difficult and each one making you use more clues at your disposal. Some of the Paris stories were quite entertaining, finding an underground cult, infiltrating it, and taking out their leader. But some were so god-awfully boring. I actually hated the fact that I was doing them. The enigmas start off relatively harmless, but by level 3, they require a membership to Mensa to solve. I had given up by then and just started Googling their location. Unless you are a history major, these seem so abnormally hard for side content. And the Helix Rifts? What was the point? They felt so arcadey inside a game that prided itself on feeling as realistic as it could. If you are familiar with this franchise, which I'm sure you are, an abundance of mindless side missions are nothing new to you. Ever since Brotherhood, the map has been cluttered with them. I don't want you to get the wrong impression though. I do not mind if a game has a bunch of meaningless content. The game is going to cost you the same regardless. You aren't going to complain that a restaurant brought you too much food. So I have no problem with Black Flag and Rogue having countless hours of pointless collectibles, statues to arrange, and upgrades to achieve because it just adds more things to do for the player. However, there is something very important about all of the games before Unity. From AC1 all the way to Rogue, the side content was completely optional. You could ignore every last drop of unnecessary gameplay that wasn't the story, and it wouldn't affect your ability to play through it. From start to finish, you could run right through the main missions if you so desired, and there wasn't a damn thing in the world to stop you. Have you tried playing Unity all the way through without doing side content? Yeah, it's fucking impossible. Unity introduced into the series something that had never been there before: a level system. Certain areas of the map were level gated. You could go to them, but do so too early and you were sure to be desynchronized the second you caused any trouble. Guards were too strong and Arno was too weak. But it's not just the areas that are level gated. The main story missions were as well. By sequence 8 or 9, you will have to be a 3 or 4 star assassin, and if you only play through the story, there is no way in hell you will have risen through the ranks fast enough to accomplish that. So now you have to grind or struggle far beyond what is enjoyable for an Assassin's Creed game. Keep in mind, there was no difficulty setting. You had to grind. So all of that mediocre filler content, that was your life now. Pointless mission after pointless mission, also you could continue with the story. If you want to know why Assassin's Creed 2's story is so beloved by fans, just take a look at the side content of that game. It's basically non-existent. We loved that story because we were able to focus solely on the story. Yes, there were races and beat-up missions and tombs. I really loved the tombs. But 80 to 90% of our gameplay came from the story. So of course we're gonna love it. The reason why Odyssey's story sucks so much is not because the story is actually that bad. It's because you forget about it 20 hours in as you grind more and more side content that doesn't mean anything. You don't even remember what you were supposed to be doing. Assassin's Creed games are better when you can focus on their stories, not when you spend all of your time grinding, or trying to upgrade your character, or defeating mythical monsters. It is best when you can develop a deep connection with a character and their struggle and join them on their path to overcome. I talked about in my Black Flag video how that story made me feel something I had never felt before playing a video game. But what did Unity's story make me feel? What did it make you feel? Do you even remember? Or were you too busy grinding away at side content to feel anything at all? What are your most memorable moments in Assassin's Creed? For me, it was the moments with Leonardo and 2 in Brotherhood, meeting Yusuf in Revelations, our conversations with Achilles in 3, and with Kid in Black Flag. Assassin's Creed has always been able to develop strong connections to the supporting cast. Sometimes it was emotional, but many times it was not. Why did we love Leonardo so much? Why did we respect Achilles and Kid? What did all of these characters do to gain our affection? Each one of them guided our protagonist, but more importantly, they taught us how to be an assassin. Something that each of the earlier games did was use the side characters to introduce new toys, mechanics, and gameplay options to us. It may seem small, but this actually plays a much bigger role in our relationships than you think, because they not only mean something to the protagonist, they also mean something to the arc of the story. Leonardo was always the source of a new gadget. Achilles was the key to all of the upgrades. Kid showed us the Mayan temple, the hideout, the assassins, and the sage. Hell, even Monroe in Assassin's Creed Rogue is introduced to us as he teaches us about gang forts and renovations. It was a bit formulaic, but Ubisoft always taught new things through the side characters, and this drew us closer to them. They had more importance because of this. In Unity, this actually does keep happening, to an extent. Bellic teaches us how to use eagle vision, and how to sword fight properly. The assassins give us the hidden blade. We get the phantom blade through an early mission. The plot gives us gadgets, and our connection to those that gave them to us grows. But it also hedges its bets. For the first time, Assassin's Creed had a skill tree. As we gained skill points for completing certain side content, we could spend them on new skills. Never mind the fact that the game is still forcing us to play side content. From fighting moves, to extra health, to more varied bombs and projectiles, most of the new gadgets to acquire came through the menu, not through a friend. This ultimately weakens our connection to those gadgets along with our potential connection to the world. This only got worse in Syndicate, and by the time we got to Origins, it was all but gone. Other than the opening few scenes where we learn to sneak in the grass and hunt, we have none of what the earlier games did. At least Origins and Valhalla tried by giving us the hidden blades, but what did Odyssey do? We got a ship from Barnabas. That's it. Is it a coincidence that Barnabas is the only memorable side character from this game? The introduction of a skill tree truly ruined one of the most important aspects of Assassin's Creed, the ability to learn from the characters in the game to become the best assassin we could. I know you all remember learning to climb higher ledges from Rosa in Assassin's Creed 2, or the hook blade tutorial from Yusuf in Revelations, or showing the Templars how to use the hidden blade in Black Flag. Imagine if these scenes would have just been ripped from the game and replaced with a selection from a menu. The more time we spend in a menu, the worse the game gets. If you're still here, I'm proud of you. That was hard to do. Assassin's Creed Unity will always hold a special place in my heart. Don't think my critiques mean I think poorly of this game. The beautiful parkour, the immersive stealth, the realistic combat, and don't forget the setting, but its mistakes have to be recognized, for better or worse. Maybe Ubisoft will see this and take it to heart as they build out their future games. Probably not, but maybe, at the very least, I forced you to consider some new ideas. If you disagree with me, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you actually think I made a few good points, then hit like and subscribe, because if Unity is getting this kind of criticism, you better bet the rest of the franchise will too.